The male lead, despite being the strongest tank, was disliked by the tunnel manager, because every time he fights, his shield inexplicably shattered. However, he didn't know that the male protagonist possessed a bug-like skill, Sacrificial Shield. It could not only transfer damage taken by his companions, but also enhance the strength of both his companions and himself. As is known, in a standard dungeon raid, there are always knights, nurses, tanks, and so on. The man with the large shield in front of us is our protagonist, Luther. Just as he completed his mission and was immersed in fantasies of reuniting with his sister, Neen, the nurse in his unit, hit the protagonist. Neen, well aware that the protagonist is a cis-on, tentatively asked the protagonist if he had any thoughts about dating. The protagonist immediately said no, because no one is cuter than his little sister. But most importantly, his sister has an incurable disease. Only the labyrinth treasure that can grant wishes can save his sister. The male protagonist of the labyrinth feels very guilty about his previous explorations. He clearly wasn't hit, but his shield inexplicably decreased. And recently, his shield value has been decreasing rapidly. He's also using up his restorative medicine. This brought Neen a lot of trouble. However, Neen didn't care. She was able to walk this path precisely because of the male lead's protection. What's more, the male lead is the strongest shield of all generations. The appearance of this person caused a stir. The other party was the yellow-haired hero. Seeing everyone was present, the yellow-haired hero immediately called for Yu Ming and his new friends. Nien has an objection, because the rule for conquering the maze is that there can be a maximum of 6 people in a team. However, the blonde-haired guy says there are indeed 6 people in the team, because the male protagonist was expelled. The reason is that he was always slacking off. The main reason is still because of the previous incident. The male protagonist's shield shattered at a single touch. Nien still wants to stand up for the male protagonist. However, blonde hair's mind was set, because the recent welcome and avoidance tank shield is very popular, dodging attacks while still dealing damage. This is vastly different from the protagonist, who can only passively defend. The protagonist had no choice but to leave the team. Before leaving, blonde hair stopped him. Because of the protagonist, they wouldn't receive their reward, so he took the protagonist's sword as compensation. Neen tried to persuade the male lead to stay, but the male lead said that if he wasn't welcome here, he'd find somewhere else to go. He told Neen to find him in Avenia town if she wanted to. Afterwards, the male lead sat alone, wondering if his skill had depleted his protective shield. However, his inability to find anyone became a problem. Then he saw a mercenary group that needed a tank, and the mission destination happened to be passing through the Avenia where the main character was going. He then volunteered his services. A person appeared chasing after him. After learning about the person, he immediately set off for his destination. After traveling day and night, just as he was about to reach his destination, a thick fog suddenly rose in the forest. At this time, the main character noticed someone in the fog. He got off the vehicle to check and found it was a young girl. An evil wind blew past. He saw a magic stone on the girl's chest. Before he could think much, he noticed a monster appearing. It was a giant forest serpent. The serpent suddenly attacked the crowd. He immediately activated his skill. The provoked serpent shot venom directly at the male protagonist. However, the male protagonist wasn't fazed at all, because he had immunity to the black bear's venom. The person who should have been attacking was stunned. Soon, everyone was knocked over by the serpent. The male protagonist was also slammed into a tree by the serpent. For his sister, the male protagonist immediately charged towards the serpent after getting up. He'll draw all of the serpent's attacks, so leave the attacks to him. With the cooperation of 4 people, the cornered serpent unleashed its ultimate move, the Windless Fire Wheel. Afterwards, the male lead entrusted the task of disassembling the monster to others, and then came before the girl to check the situation. Learning that the girl was being chased by a monster and had nowhere to go, the male lead immediately invited the girl to go to Avancia with him. The girl agreed. At this time, the commissioner, to repay the protagonist, decided to give the girl his clothes. The commissioner believed the girl was a runaway android slave. The protagonist didn't think so. He was surprised to find that the girl had no collar. After reaching their mission destination, the protagonist parted ways with the commissioner. Only then did the protagonist remember that he didn't know the girl's name. However, the girl said she had no name. So, the male protagonist, combining the petals around them, decided to name the girl Luna. An unexpected guest appeared in the forest. Luna immediately grabbed a small knife from the ground. With a swift motion, she quickly took care of the alpha wolf. This also made the man realize that Luna was a man-made human created by Dafa. The male protagonist explains that it's an extremely rare skill, and until now, only one person has ever possessed it, but he passed away years ago. The male protagonist immediately asks Luna to appraise the skill. When the skill is activated, it's discovered that the male protagonist has 4 skills. One is called Wing Temptation. It can attract people's attention. Secondly, strengthen the body. It can enhance the body's strength to the limit. Thirdly, Life Conversion. It can convert the shields consumed during battle into power. Fourthly, Shared Shield. It can transfer the damage taken by companions onto oneself, strengthening companions and one's own defensive capabilities. This moment, the male protagonist's long-held question is finally answered. Just how strong is this male protagonist? Sparring with the guard captain and deputy captain Blonde Hair, initially he was pressured by Blonde Hair's superb swordsmanship and could only defend. Yet he still secured victory with a single move. It's all because he has a life conversion skill that able to convert the damage he receives into his own offensive power. Therefore, no one in the village dares to spar with him anymore. However, the male protagonist is strong-willed. Privately, he's a severe Siscon. Upon hearing her voice, he immediately transforms into the ultimate Siscon maniac. That day, the male protagonist finally brought the white-haired girl back to his village. He happened to run into the yellow-haired patrol. After exchanging a few pleasantries, the male lead then took Whitehair home. He thought his sister was still asleep. Unexpectedly, upon opening the door, he saw a table full of his favorite food. It turned out that his sister, Blackhair, special skill was the ability to briefly see into the future. Therefore, Blackhair had already predicted her brother's return today, and her hair was like that because of her special constitution. So it would move with her emotions. Soon, a table full of delicious food was ready. Just as the three began to enjoy the meal, the spiky-haired one noticed that the white-haired one's posture while using the spoon was strange. This caused the white-haired one to immediately kneel and apologize. It turned out that no one had ever taught her how to use a spoon. The white-haired one was afraid that this would reveal her identity as an artificial human, and she would be captured and destroyed. Seeing this, Blackhair quickly comforted her, telling her not to be afraid. She also carefully taught her how to use a spoon. Only then did Whitehair's worried heart settle down. In the following 3 days, Whitehair diligently learned. Perhaps it was an innate ability of artificial humans. Whitehair quickly mastered all the necessary life skills. Even the dishes she made tasted exactly the same as Blackhair's. After breakfast, Bulkhair saw that the weather was nice, so the male lead took Whitehair out to familiarize herself with the village. Blackhair even thoughtfully took out her own clothes for Whitehair to change. But Whitehair was afraid of the magic stone on her chest being discovered. She could only take the clothes and run off to change secretly. Afterwards, the male lead took Whitehair to the blacksmith's shop first. He told the old man about his magic sword being stolen. Upon hearing this, the old man immediately understood the male lead's intentions. He also guaranteed to forge a divine sword for him in the shortest possible time. Then the male lead took the Whitehair to see the village's magic vegetable garden. The so-called magic vegetables refer to vegetables with magical powers. These vegetables can grow regardless of the season, only needing infused magic to cultivate them. They also encountered the village's pharmacist, an old lady, here. It turned out that the boy with spiky hair suffered from a serious illness. He had been surviving until now thanks to the pharmacist's medicine, but the pharmacist's abilities were limited and couldn't save the boy. That's why the male lead became an imposter. He did it to find the legendary secret to cure the spiky-haired one's illness. After experiencing this happy time, the white-haired one finally mustered the courage to confess to the male lead that she was an artificial human. The white-haired one thought he would be captured and destroyed, but unexpectedly, the male lead confessed that he had known the white-haired one's identity since their first meeting, because at that time, Whitehair's eyes were the same as his younger sister's when she was sad. Therefore, the male lead hoped to help Whitehair and encouraged her to live as a human being. Later, Whitehair went home and confessed her artificial human identity to Blackhair. Sure enough, Blackhair didn't mind at all. She also hoped that Whitehair would continue to be her friend. Finally, Whitehair's guard was completely let down at this moment. The next day, under the watchful eyes of the guards, the male protagonist and the blonde-haired man began a simulated training match. The rule was that whoever's shield value dropped to 0 will lose. The male protagonist also wanted to test his newly appraised skill. Both sides started with intense momentum. Using his agile swordsmanship, the blonde-haired man pressured the male protagonist, forcing him to rely on his shield for defense. He knew that if he took the sword blows head-on, even with a high shield value, he'd still be instantly killed. Luckily, the protagonist's new skill is ridiculously powerful. After suffering enough shield damage, the male protagonist initiated life conversion. In one go, he completely destroyed the blonde-haired man's shield. The guards around them all suddenly claimed to have urgent business. And the protagonist, with this new offensive skill, is even more confident in finding that legendary treasure to cure his sister's illness. However, what he didn't know was his sister always felt she had been a burden to the male lead. She even thought that if she weren't there, the male lead could have lived a happier life. The sticky, yellow-haired hero finally suffered the consequences of his poor judgment. After driving the male lead away, the hero discovered his shield's depletion rate was abnormally fast. The hero refused to believe it. He used the life burst skill. Unexpectedly, it instantly depleted a large amount of his shield value. Even the skill's power felt significantly weaker. The hero wouldn't admit he was wrong. He forcefully activated the skill, finally slaying the monster before him. His companion suggested a temporary retreat. The hero stubbornly refused to retreat. He still wanted to forcefully use Life Burst again, but he couldn't use it a second time. Under the monster's attack, the hero's shield reached zero. He finally felt how painful it was to be injured without a shield. The brave man immediately transformed into a critic and lost his ambition. If it weren't for the blue-haired girl's timely rescue, he's been dead for a long time. The cowardly hero shows no remorse. He blames the newly joined tank girl. Nian can no longer tolerate it. She points out that this failure, like the previous ones, is a direct result of the hero's reckless actions. Using the male lead's incredibly strong shield, the hero has gone 2.5 years without training. Not only that, Yao's body was drained by wine and women. It was only after the male protagonist was gone that he learned about his own skills and characteristics. Nian had already figured out that his skill could strengthen his body, but at the cost of consuming a large amount of his shield. On the day the male protagonist went away, the brave man used up his most powerful skill so far. It was also the day that Nian discovered the hero's unknown skill. It was to take the damage of a shield meant for others. The hero refused to accept this reality. The girls were extremely disappointed. They all left the hero's team. Little did they know there were no inns nearby. Black-haired sister suggested that Nian stay at their house. The male lead immediately agreed. Nian is a duke's daughter and a saint of the church. Nian didn't mind. She decided to stay here. The male lead had no choice but to lend her his room. Nian is very considerate. She doesn't mind sleeping with the male lead. The male lead couldn't take it anymore. He thought it was a joke. Unexpectedly, the girl blushed. It wasn't entirely a joke. Suddenly, Feiyu came knocking, asking for help. A never-before-seen monster destroyed the orchard. The surrounding magical energy revealed its true form. It was a little black creature. At this moment, Xiao Haizi seemed to be controlled by magic. He attacked everyone uncontrollably. The male protagonist uses picking skills to attract hatred from the monster. The other seized the opportunity to attack, but Xiao Haizi's spinning attack magic instantly depleted most of the male protagonist's shield. Fortunately, the other girl simultaneously used healing magic to replenish his shield. The male lead's skill reassures everyone to launch a full-scale attack. His skill will transfer the damage everyone would have taken onto himself. Seeing this, everyone can finally confidently unleash their attacks. Xiao Haizi, knowing he can't retreat, ran away. Luna attacks, and a wall erupts from the ground, blocking its escape route. The male lead uses the shield he just recovered, all transformed into attack force. You tell me this is a human shield? Everyone was unharmed. Afterwards, people discovered 2 magic stones inside the monster. One of them looked like a magic stone from an artificial human, and the monster indeed had suture marks on his body, indicating that someone illegally used artificial human technology applied to monsters. The male protagonist noticed his sister's recent attitude was a little strange. Waiting for Luna to wake up, he found his sister had already prepared breakfast. She was very grateful to the brother and sister for helping her live a normal life, and the siblings knew a lot. She was curious where they both learned such skills. It started with a shantytown where the siblings lived. Back then, a tribal organization flourished there. It ran a program to help shantytown children get back on track. The siblings were fortunate enough to enter a military academy. But the male lead didn't know his female classmate often gossiped about his sister behind her back. They said it's all because of the younger sister. That's why the male lead can't do what he wants to do. Back then, he had an incredibly strong talent as a tank. He was very popular among my classmates. Everyone believed he could become a knight, but behind his back, he was working to earn money for my sister's treatment, so he decided to become an adventurer. The younger sister is sad because of herself. Her older brother lost his future. Luna saw the sadness hidden in her expression. So she came to her younger sister's room to comfort, but she didn't know what to do. If someone sacrificed his own life for her, what would Luna do? That person could have chosen a happier path. But for her, he willingly gave it up. Instead, he chose a bitter journey. Luna probably understands what the sister means, but she's not sure if anyone else can do so much for someone else. But she believes for that man, this choice was definitely the happiest. Luna could try opening up to the male lead. Surprisingly, the male lead is even willing to help her, an artificial human. Therefore, his thoughts are definitely different from ordinary people. Her younger sister doesn't know how to face the male lead. She always feels that she can't rely too much on him. So recently, she's likely suppressing her own emotions. But deep down, she clearly wants to become closer to the male lead. To the rhythm of Luna's drums, the younger sister finally asks the question she's been wanting to ask: whether the male lead is happy now. The male lead immediately and happily replies that he is extremely happy. The younger sister doesn't understand. Why would he help someone who should be abandoned like her? Little did she know that the male protagonist had also been helped by her. When they were children, he looked rather anxious, so he was often feared by his peers. Back then, only his younger sister always stayed by his side. Therefore, as long as he could be with his sister, it was the happiest moment of his life. My sister is so happy. You're such a good brother. Team fights definitely can't go without a sturdy tank. This male protagonist is an incredibly strong tank. Not only can he not attract hatred, he can also share the damage with his teammates and still maintain his output. Lightly he sent the monsters to their boxes. Truly, he lived up to the name of a great tank. That day, the male protagonist received a mission to hunt monsters. The target was a mutated chameleon King Kong. While hunting it, he also had to investigate its origins. Besides the male lead and the vigilante team, there's also a small mercenary team. And the male lead's new sword has just been freshly manufactured. With the magic stone above, he can also use magic to enchant the sword. Although the male lead's magic covers all attributes, it's still not enough for an attack. Right now, he only needs to infuse the sword with magic. He can use all kinds of magical weapons. The adventurer beside him saw this and sneered, scoffing at such a divine weapon. Being given to an F-rank protagonist is a waste of resources. Hearing this, Luna was the first to object. The protagonist thought it was better to keep a low profile. Rather than being an important figure, he prefers others to see him as a rookie. That's why he hasn't updated his adventure rank. But his guildmate, Nian, is a saint. The adventurers, judging by appearances, immediately recognized her as a big shot. Just then, the benevolent dragon Vidra suddenly appeared. It was a sneak attack. The vice guild leader was the first to be attacked. The male lead also joined the fight. He immediately targeted him with mockery. The opponent immediately locked onto the male lead as its target, but the male lead blocked all of Yi's punches by full power output. It seemed he was about to win, but the male lead suddenly felt uneasy. He felt that this King Kong was just like himself, like a meat shield. Sure enough, the next second, the King Kong's teammate suddenly appeared, catching the male lead completely off guard. Goodness, the monster actually understands tactics. It shocked everyone. Even the deputy tunnel leader felt like they were doomed. Fortunately, the male lead stepped forward and steadied him. After regaining his composure, the male lead launched another attack. This time, he faced the siege of 3 pairs of monsters. However, he remained at ease and first deflected the attack of 1 pair. Then his teammate followed up with damage, securing the kill. The male lead then turned to face the second pair of Kongs. The sword shipped from Qixin factory comes in handy now. Then the deputy tunnel master will deliver the finishing blow and collect the head. Finally, only the initial King Kong remains. As usual, the male lead will inflict damage first. After the tunnel friends add a bunch of control effects, the male lead gives it the final blow. Sure enough, with a tank, group battles are much more comfortable. And the monsters on the ground disappeared into smoke. The way he died was like a monster in a maze. Sure enough, the male lead and the others soon found the entrance to the maze ahead. That night, the town held a banquet to celebrate. The appearance of the maze was undoubtedly a great boon for the town's consolidation. It would attract adventurers and boost the town's development. But at the same time, many disadvantages will also appear. Among adventurers, there's a mix of good and bad. All sorts of people. Sometimes, there might be illegal individuals like stalkers mixed in, and that's when the guild steps in to solve this problem. Adventurers who join the guild will receive national certification. At the same time, the male lead also have to protect the whole town. It's like being promoted to editor-in-chief. Most adventurers, for the sake of stability, will choose to join a guild. That way, the whole town can remain stable. But right now, there are no guilds. The adventurers who come to challenge the maze have no restraints. The male protagonist couldn't help but worry about his younger sister and the girls around him, so he could only temporarily take charge of managing the adventurers in town. He patrols every day to prevent adventurers from causing trouble in town. For disruptive adventurers, he can only choose to quietly suppress them. But now, only a week has passed, and a large number of adventurers have entered this place. Groups are also competing to take over this place, and there are also many individuals competing to take over this place. If they fight, everyone around will suffer. After being lectured by the male lead, they instantly became well-behaved, but if the hard approach doesn't work, they try a softer one. They want the male lead to join their group. The male lead, being an adult, naturally refuses both. It is obvious that he is more qualified. The male lead once also hoped to join a certain fixed group. After solving the problem, the male lead received another commission. He was again asked to make a choice. The first was to let the male lead create a group to take over the labyrinth. Although the male lead has the support of the townspeople, but to cure his sister, he couldn't possibly stay here. The second option is to destroy the maze. But if we do that, the town will lose its chance to develop. Because there are too many mazes, the country can't manage them anymore. Right now, we only have these two choices. After coming out, the male lead received more bad news. His younger sister fell ill, so he hurried home. Looking at his sick younger sister, he had to carefully consider his options. If he created a guild, he wouldn't be able to leave. Then, he wouldn't be able to freely explore the dungeons, to find the dungeon secrets, and cure his younger sister. After much deliberation, he made his choice. He wants Nian and Luna to go with him to destroy the labyrinth. Luna proposes a win-win solution. She can act as a proxy. The male lead will manage the group. Whether it's the town or the male lead, she has no reason not to help. Seeing this, Nian also intends to drop the Saintess act and join the group. The sister also stood up to support the male lead. Compared to making the male lead stay, she would rather not get better. With the support of others, the male lead will be stronger. This time, the male lead will choose both. The male protagonist is really convinced that yellow-haired hero changed his stereotypes and apologized to the male lead. Soon after he agreed to protect the town, he was summoned by an investigator from the nearby labyrinth. The twin sisters, Lilia and Lily, because of their constitution, although they are twins, their eye colors are different. Red and blue irises are quite subtle. There are also knights sent by the church, and the culprit who took him away, the blonde-haired hero. Nian is unhappy and stands up for the male lead, but the male lead has let go of the past. He just wants to know what they want from him. It certainly won't just be a friendly greeting. He'd encountered humanoid guardians before, but none of them could have a normal conversation. The blonde hair was injured by the other party. Therefore, the male lead will complete the investigation in his place. Wang Mao knows the male lead needs to find the labyrinth treasure to cure his sister's illness. He also understands that he once relied on the male lead's skills to successfully conquer the labyrinth. The male lead naturally won't let go of this opportunity. Therefore, the task is temporarily taken over by the male lead. Wang Mao also changed his stereotyped impression and apologized to the male lead. People arrive at the first level of the maze via the teleportation array. Although it's inside a maze, it feels like the open wilderness. Little do they know, even the sun is fake. Because the space within the maze is distorted, many things happen here that wouldn't occur outside. As the magic circle disappears, if they want to go back, they must find other magic barriers. Normally, to move, one must find a random magic array. With Lily, they can freely teleport to any floor they've been to, but at most, Lily can only move 6. So the small tunnel can only hold 6 people. Nian demonstrated it to Luna. Unexpectedly, Luna learned it in an instant. Then 3 pairs of King Kong monsters approached here. The male lead quickly assigned everyone their positions. He will become everyone's shield, providing protection. Their actions were all observed by the Guardians. Soon, they arrived at the floor where they had previously encountered the Guardians. But this time, they encountered a double-headed red earth dragon. To conserve energy, they didn't intend to fight. The Guardians were pleased and hoped they would quickly find them. At this moment, The 6 had reached the 9th floor. After that is where the Guardian resides. The male lead is very grateful for their help. The twins know he's doing this to treat his sister's illness. As the older sister, Lilia understands the importance of family. Besides, it's too early to thank you now. The main event is yet to come. The team had just arrived at the 10th floor when the Guardian immediately approached them. The male lead realized that the Guardian previously appeared on the 5th floor. The reason why he's guarding the 10th floor this time, because this floor is his territory. He naturally needs to use his abilities where he can. The male lead, merely accepting the Guardian's casual strike, felt his arm about to be severed. He tried to talk his way out of it, but the conversation of real men is through clashing blades. The male lead felt the intense killing intent and could only fight back. People attacked him in turns, and there were even sneak attacks from behind. Unexpectedly, the Guardian seemed to have eyes on his back, easily dodging the attacks. Now he's going to show his true skills. The Guardian completes his transformation into Bone King Kojiro. Just from the sound, the male protagonist knows how dangerous he is, but for his sister, he can't back down. The Shield Warrior and the male protagonist take turns defending against the attacks. Even so, everyone's shield values are dropping rapidly. Taking one more hit could be fatal. The male protagonist instructs Neen to focus on healing. Lily is assisting the main attacker. The male lead uses provocation again to draw aggro. This will be a long battle, but as long as the male lead's ultimate shield protects them, he can convert the consumed shield value into equal attack power. As long as he's there, they can endure. But even so, Lilia, the main attacker, quickly shows signs of exhaustion. Luna worries that if this continues, someone will eventually fall. Nien must do her job well. Only then can we maximize everyone's safety. At this point, the male lead had already used 30,000 shields and unleashed his ultimate attack. Unexpectedly, after the smoke cleared, the Guardian was still able to move. The Guardian fight back by creating a giant ball and smashing it towards them. Lily, the younger sister, was the first to collapse. Sure was then knocked away by the Guardian. Sure, though tough talking, said he was still able to continue fighting, but his trembling arms betrayed him. Seeing everyone's gloomy faces, the male lead could only make the decision to retreat. A decision that would shame his ancestors. But Nien disagreed. Leaving now would be tantamount to abandoning his own ideals. He knew it was because his hands were shaking, but he had long since prepared himself to risk his life. The girl didn't want him to be discouraged. Accompanied by the Guardian's long sword, the male protagonist thinks of his little sister. At this moment, the twins take out their killer copper. They complete the transformation through a kiss. Seeing the Guardian wielding his greatsword again, the male protagonist knows that if he receives this blow, his shield will be completely depleted. So, after receiving the blow, he immediately activates the life transfer skill. He transforms the consumed shields into a powerful attack, unleashing it. Finally, the Guardian is beaten back into human form. He has no strength left. Sitting on the ground, his head bowed, the protagonist has no intention of killing him. He only wants to seek the maze's treasure that can fulfill his wish. Then, the Guardian throws a smooth magic stone. One can make a wish by infusing it with magic power, but it can only be used once and will shatter afterward. The male protagonist happily returns home and gives the magic stone to his sister. After his sister makes a wish, sure enough, her body becomes more active than before. The male protagonist is excited. This is the first time he's seen his sister so lively. As long as he continues to conquer dungeons and obtain treasures, he believes that one day his sister's illness will be completely cured. What is it like to be a dungeon guardian? You just need to replicate goblins every day. Then, release them into the maze to attack the intruders. It's not that simple. You can also try releasing different types of monsters. You can even draw rare monsters. The protagonist is undoubtedly unlucky. Just before, the protagonist successfully conquered the maze. So many things appeared in the town. Adventurers who came to hunt lizards. Lilia suggested the male protagonist find other groups to ally with. The prerequisite was to offer something equivalent as a condition for the alliance. However, the only thing the male protagonist had to offer was his strength. In addition, the male protagonist wasn't clear on how to manage a group. Nien suggested the male protagonist could use himself as an advertisement to recruit people, but the male protagonist immediately refused, because he didn't want to see his harem publicized like this. At that moment, Marius, the Labyrinth's guardian, entered, expressing his desire to join the protagonist's group. The protagonist had no choice but to agree and let him join. Afterwards, the protagonist followed Marius to his usual resting place. The pool before them shows the maze's layout. and the Guardian can adjust monster placement and maze structure. He can create or duplicate monsters using points. These points accumulate over time, or when adventurers' shields are damaged, monsters can be destroyed to recover points. Marius then demonstrated duplicating a monster to the protagonist, then summoning it into the maze. Besides goblins, there are still half-orcs and half-elves here. There are 4 kinds: King Kong and lizards. The male lead looked at the 9-tailed fox worth 1 million in front of him and was stunned. "There's no way you can summon these, right?" Marius explained that at this time, the male lead have to use the magic book of obedience. This is a tool that can randomly create monsters. It's like a lottery. The male protagonist immediately drew one. The result was a pair of slimes. The male protagonist realized that in time, he could create S-class monsters here. Then, people would come to this maze continuously. He immediately decided to manage the maze instead of Marius. But before that, he needs to think, what kind of maze should he create here? Afterward, the male lead took the slime home. The girls also loved it very much. The Black Dragon group received the male lead's alliance letter. The White Tiger group received one as well. Both leaders immediately decided to meet the male lead. Soon, the male lead received invitations to the ball from 2 groups. Their alliance proposal was rejected, but they would take the male lead under their control. The condition for this was to hand over Neen, who possesses the power of a saint. The male lead naturally refused, but he still decided to attend the ball. At this time, Marius remembered something. That's because he had once seen in the pool a maze with self-aware guardians, just like him. A maze with self-aware guardians. The male protagonist immediately decided to conquer this maze. Neen remembered that even the Rain Core hadn't been able to break through 50 floors of the maze. However, the male protagonist wasn't worried at all, because he had the ridiculously powerful Marius. There are also mages and healers, so he's determined to form an alliance and conquer the labyrinth. Afterward, the male lead and his group arrived at the ball. When the ball officially began, the vice commander on stage announced that he had invited a special guest. That was the Saintess Neen. When people saw the male lead on stage, they burst into laughter. The male lead immediately introduced himself as Neen's team leader. The vice team leader then remembered the male lead. He was the tank in the brave little tunnel party. Following this, the vice team leader offered Neen an olive branch. He invited her to join his team. In exchange, the vice team leader was willing to send an advisor to the male lead's team. The male lead refused, because he came here to form an alliance. The people there laughed again after he arrived. A small, insignificant group wanted to form an alliance with a large, powerful group. The main character had to borrow a microphone. He told everyone that he came here to conquer the labyrinth, and that he would make everyone regret it, because he intends to conquer the labyrinth to floor 51 and beyond. After the main character's speech, Koshi, the chairman of the Black Dragon group, immediately became interested. When shaking hands with a man, the male protagonist sensed through the strength of the handshake that the other party was incredibly powerful. Koshi then stated that if the male protagonist could truly conquer the maze, then he would consider an alliance with him. At this time, Little, the chairman of the White Tiger group, appeared, also stating that as long as the male protagonist could do that, then she would also consider an alliance with him. As the world's strongest tank, while he was conquering the dungeon, because the damage output in the tunnel was not strong, he couldn't stand it and chose to kill the dragon directly. Just before that, the main character made a bold claim before the raid that he would clear the dungeon till the impossible 51st floor. So he brought his small team to the dungeon, because Lily and twin sisters reached the 49th floor with the help of the labyrinth investigators, so they could directly reach the 49th floor. The reason they didn't go directly to the 50th floor was to understand the frequency of monster appearances. According to the information gathered, the Black Dragon group has 4 tanks and 2 healers, while the White Tiger group has 4 mages and 2 healers. No matter where they go, there are often many people trapped in abnormal states within the tunnels. The male protagonist isn't fazed at all by this, because his skills make him immune to abnormal states. After they arrive in the labyrinth, they quickly encounter a fork in the road. Marius, the labyrinth's guard, immediately realizes there's a monster spawn point nearby, because once an intruder enters that fork in the road, another monster will attack from behind. However, the next second, the impatiently waiting monster appears before him. The helpless protagonist has no choice but to choose. Just as everyone else continues to kill the black monster in the small tunnel, they discover more monsters appearing. To conserve energy, the male lead threw a flashbang and ran away. Later, while he was resting, Neen discovered the male lead's sacrificial shield. Whether the shield's damage transferred to him completely depends on the individual. This also piqued Marius's curiosity. The male lead can both be immune to the Black Plague Bear and passively take damage. If he could learn self-healing later, wouldn't that be wonderful? The male lead was curious if humans really possessed that skill. Marius frankly stated, "You humans don't even know." This made the male lead curious about whether Marius was human. Then Marius explained that the labyrinth, where humans obtain artifacts, was actually created by a demon god to destroy humanity. Therefore, the labyrinth is managed by a powerful demon. But Marius wouldn't continue living this way. That's why he decided to team up with the male lead to conquer the labyrinth. At this time, Lily interrupted their conversation, because she wanted to know how to deal with the monsters on the 50th floor. Soon after, they encountered a dragon skeleton. Because they were prepared beforehand, they understood that physical attacks were particularly effective against the dragon skeleton. Plus, it was weak to fire. The male protagonist handled it with ease. After an hour of fighting, the bone dragon entered its second stage. It unleashed a fiery attack towards the man. But this attack was nothing before the male protagonist. After the attack stopped, the male protagonist went up, provoked it, and drew its aggro. Then he took a beating. They've also lost a considerable amount of shield. After the 50th floor, they didn't rush to the next floor. Instead, they returned to town intending to celebrate. Then Lily told the male lead to wait to sell the bone dragon materials after a day. Otherwise, the news that their strategy went smoothly will leak out. Just for eating a meal, he's constantly bombarded by girls throwing themselves at him. Luna also wants to be with him. Unfortunately, the male lead is an ultimate siscon. His younger sister is seriously ill. Currently for him, conquering the maze and finding the wish-granting treasure is most important. The male lead escapes back to his room. Unexpectedly, Lilia is sleeping in his bed again, because she needs to talk to him. It's mainly about her sister's change. Lily and her twin sister have almost the same abilities, but her sister seems to have pushed herself too hard, so much so that she fell asleep the moment she got back. Her sister is curious how the male lead views this change. He actually doesn't like change either, especially after the maze appeared and the town changed. Many townspeople feel the same way, but sometimes he also appreciates the town's changes. If it stayed the same, the town wouldn't be so vibrant. Therefore, change isn't important. What's important is being able to enjoy the changes. Lilia always felt that maintaining the status quo was best. Compared to her sister, she was more timid. However, she was happy to see her sister change, but watching her sister go far and wide also made her feel lonely. The close relationship between sisters will definitely not change. These are exactly the words Lilia hoped to hear. Starting tomorrow, she will properly face her sister's efforts to change. The next day, the male protagonist and the team arrived at the maze, preparing to conquer floor 51. Due to the heavy rain, even the top tier guild just arrived at this floor and hasn't gathered much information yet. The floor boss is very powerful. Besides perception magic, Lilia needs to use other methods to find the monsters. Sure enough, the maze's perception magic is completely ineffective. Even wind magic can't disperse the thick fog, because the fog is all created by magic. But the protagonist can still barely sense monsters approaching. So he uses his signature provocation to draw aggro. Unexpectedly, something spits a glob of saliva in the fog. Lily guesses the monster is a mermaid. The protagonist tells everyone to retreat towards the 3 o'clock direction. They haven't been surrounded by mermaid yet. Soon, the mermaid finally deigned to appear. Marius has a clever trick to sense the merfolk's location. He skillfully retreated and eliminated the appearing mermaid, and all the materials obtained were high grade. After a short rest, the team continued to the next level of the maze. This place is spacious, though not open. Then, a magic circle appeared, teleporting in a pair of dark skeletons. 3 colored crystals float behind the skull crab. The main character feels that the skull crab is the strongest monster he has encountered so far. Furthermore, the yellow crystal can deploy a protective shield to defend against attacks. The red crystal, however, can use magic to attack. The blue crystal enhances the skull crab's speed. The main character takes the lead in attracting the skull crab's aggro. His companions attack from behind. However, they were still hit, but it also exposed the shield's weakness. It can only defend against attacks from one direction. As the skull's eyes emitted a dazzling light, Lilia started attacking her own people. Lilia seemed to see her abusive parents again. The male protagonist dodged the flying skull. He proposed an exchange with Marius. He would deal with the confused Lilia. Lilia kept saying she wanted to protect her sister. The male lead remembered the sisters had fled their home because of abuse. He guessed she was experiencing a flashback of past trauma. He tried to say things to Lilia that would alleviate her panic. "We're all companions here. No one will bully them." He would protect both sisters no matter what. A few comforting words restored Lilia's composure. Seeing the positive effect, the male lead continued, "We're all family. He'll take care of any problem." To avoid the male lead being burned, Nian uses water magic to cool him down. The male lead, despite the flames, attacks at close range. He's still hit and falls, but the water on his body successfully penetrates the shield. It turns out the shield can't simultaneously defend against magic and physical attacks. Thus, with everyone cooperating, they finally managed to inflict damage on the skeleton. Nian used magic to cast black magic resistance on everyone. They were no longer afraid of the skeleton's illusion magic. Afterwards, the three sisters simultaneously used different magic spells to attack the skeleton. Seeing the skeleton preparing to escape, the male protagonist was unaffected by his sister's magic. This was a good opportunity for him to use his shield to convert into offensive power. Unexpectedly, the skeleton used a splitting attack. Even the main character couldn't handle the simultaneous attacks from two skeletons. Luna activated her cheat code and successfully found the fake skeleton. Lilia and Marius immediately attacked and eliminated the fake skeleton. The main body immediately retreated upon seeing this. The main character suddenly powered up to stop it. His companions then teamed up to inflict damage from behind. Finally, they successfully defeated the dark skeleton. But before they could celebrate, another incident occurred. The male lead's neck was suddenly bitten by a small, sharp tooth, for pairs of dark skulls appeared around them again. Lily was surprised that dark skulls would reappear here. She thought she had already fixed it. She immediately eliminated them with a single strike. Marius knew something was wrong. He didn't expect that a demon-level guardian would appear here. This girl is the strongest person the male lead has encountered so far. His power has reached the terrifying level of a demon lord. But as long as the male lead makes a move, he can bring her into his harem. As the male lead and his group reach the bottom of the labyrinth guardian, Amon, appears. Although she appears gentle, she is a demon lord. Before her immense magical power, the male lead can only barely hold his own. But she didn't expect that when the male lead saw her, he wouldn't be scared at all. In the male lead's eyes, she's just a cute little thing. The next second, the male lead appeared before her. Now she is the male lead's partner. And she, also a demon lord, dislikes the other demon lords. Hearing this, Amon still had a confident expression, because the male lead's strength is nothing to her. But don't forget, the male lead isn't alone now. The male lead believes that as long as they unite their partners, no maze is unconquerable for me. It just so happens that Amon is also a maze guardian. Today, she will witness whether the protagonist has the strength. The protagonist is also prepared to meet her attack. He stepped forward and resisted Amon's wind magic. However, the magic's power was overwhelming, and the protagonist was immediately forced back. Amon also neutralized the attacks of the others one by one. Furthermore, the protagonist's taunts were ineffective against her, but the male lead won't let her off easily. However, Amon, using wind magic, easily dodged the male lead's attack, but Nian won't let her be comfortable for long. Using earth magic, she sent her sprawling. The other teammates' attacks followed, but she still dealt with them easily. But the real fight is just beginning. This time, the protagonist's taunt worked. He immediately drew Amon's attention to himself, successfully creating an opportunity for his teammate to attack. The protagonist then threw a flashbang, catching him off guard. Following that, a blade flashed, finally causing damage. Unexpectedly, this attack directly caused Amon to enter her second stage. The male lead can't just stand there. He should seize the opportunity while the opponent is transforming to retrieve the stuffed bear. Then the opponent also transformed into a giant wolf. The aura it emanated made the male lead feel uneasy. He asked other members if he could also transform, but fearing he might accidentally injure his friends, he withdrew the idea. The male lead could only grit his teeth and charge forward. However, his friend's attack couldn't break through the opponent's defense. Even magic couldn't inflict substantial damage, and the male lead is also about to collapse. Fortunately, Marius intervened in time. He has unleashed his full power. However, this clash made the opponent realize that they must act quickly. After letting out a roar, he launched a fierce attack on the male lead. But the male lead wouldn't let him have his way. As long as the male lead, acting as a shield, he can wear him down by simply waiting for him to collapse. Sure enough, the opponent slowly began to fall into his trap. His movements also began to slow. However, the opponent used wind magic to create a protective shield. For a time, the male lead and the others couldn't get close. but the stone on top of the opponent's head began to flicker. The male lead presumed that's his weakness, but before launching an attack, they have to dispel his wind magic. The others will provide restraint during the incantation. Finally, at the crucial moment, they waited for Nian's magic. Having lost their protective shield, they were left with nothing but taking hits. The male lead also seized the opportunity. He unleashed his amazing 30,000 point damage attack. Unexpectedly, this crucial ultimate move was dodged by the opponent. Instead, he was attacked by the opponent's wind magic. The male protagonist's shield is almost depleted. Fortunately, he barely survived that wave. But another main force member has fallen. For a moment, the situation turned against them. The male protagonist stayed behind to help his friend recover. Even without a shield, he had to continue fighting. For his comrade, he had to step up. But without a shield, he could only use his body to defend. However, the opponent prepared to use wind magic again. Unexpectedly, the male protagonist couldn't wait for his attack. It turned out that the opponent was also exhausted, but the male protagonist's illusory realm wasn't much better. He intended to retreat. The younger twin sister with blue hair was attacked. The sister would merge with her older sister and rejoin the battle. This victory in the battle was also her wish. The male lead and the others regained their breath. The male lead still led the charge. The twin sisters, after completing the fusion, also joined the battle. However, the pursuit was mainly led by the younger sister's body. Her simple attack was easily seen through by the opponent. The male lead aimed to buy time before he adapted. But without a shield, the male lead could only take the hit directly. In this crisis, he remembered Marius's technique. He can convert his magic into a shield. He held his breath and deployed the shield again. With the shield's protection, he successfully recovered. Faced with the opponent's fierce attack, he pressed forward instead of retreating. The blue-haired one also launched an attack. She imbued all her magic into the blade. She unleashed all his magic in one breath. After the smoke cleared, Amon fell powerlessly. The male lead, of course, hadn't forgotten about the magic stone that grants wishes. Amon obediently handed it over, revealing the information the male lead wanted. That is, the Demon King's goal is to destroy the world, but the male lead still planned to spare Amon's life. Amon also took the opportunity to switch sides and join the male lead's group. With this, the male lead successfully formed an alliance with other groups. Then they set off for home. While everyone was asleep, the younger twin sister secretly approached the male lead. The male lead didn't understand what was happening. The next second, the older sister also woke up. The male lead was extremely flustered. Fortunately, he didn't see what had just happened, and the male lead's younger sister finally waited for the magic stone. After using it, she's also a step closer to recovery. To show her gratitude, the sister decided to take care of Amon's meals, 3 meals a day, plus an afternoon snack. Amon was also happy to accept. Being a demon lord, what could be better than free room and board? The male lead is the world's strongest tank. However, what he didn't know was his greatest strength originates from the power of the gods and the power of the Demon King. Just before that, one day, Nian suddenly brought a child, and the girl was also an artificial human. At that moment, the girl suddenly woke up and asked them to save her companions, because her companions were attacked in the nearby forest. After leaving Luna to treat the girl, the male protagonist immediately rushed to the scene. He was dumbfounded when he arrived. He saw the rain-induced artificial humans fighting each other. One side was clearly at a disadvantage. They seemed to possess emotions. No matter how hard the male protagonist tried to communicate, the other artificial human only relentlessly attacked. Later, the male protagonist learns from the green-haired girl that these androids all come from the country of Brumkes. And the androids they're pursuing lack of self-awareness. They're simply androids who only know how to obey orders. They're also pursuing the fleeing androids. However, the male protagonist didn't dare to intervene, just because the other side might have feelings, like Luna. At that moment, Amon began to give the male lead psychological counseling, telling him that those androids were no different from puppets. Without any more worries, the male lead began a massacre. After dealing with the pursuing androids, he brought them back to the group's mansion. Then, Nian informed the lord of the situation. Here, androids are unprotected. People in town are also wary of them. The male protagonist wants to see the lord. A girl named Faya says she wants to go too. Xing thinks it would be faster if the person involved explained it, and it could also reveal information about the Bronx Kingdom. Later, the male protagonist finds the lord. He expresses his desire to have the androids stay in the town. The idea is to solve the labor shortage. For the male lead's proposal, the lord quickly agreed. Because just seeing Faya, he understood that these androids are almost indistinguishable from humans. Why did the android technology develop so rapidly? FI explained, since the appearance of a man called the Demon Lord, Greed, the artificial human technology of the Bunkai's kingdom has seen remarkable development. Artificial humans, like him, are still being mass-produced. After receiving news, the Lord immediately reported that those artificial humans will be protected in Avania. After returning, the male lead told the children this news. He proposed having the children help out in town. However, as soon as they started working, they recalled their past experiences of abuse. To comfort the children, the male lead planned to have them build a bathhouse first. Apparently, there were many people in town who didn't bathe regularly. Nian noticed that Luna had been acting strangely lately. She speculated that Luna might have special feelings for those androids. Later, the male lead also proactively sought Luna out for a heart-to-heart talk. Luna was curious whether, after the bathhouse incident, he would abandon those artificial humans. The male lead explained that he wouldn't. After resolving Luna's emotional issues, the male lead intended to talk to Amon, but as soon as he did, Amon arrived. Amon immediately launched into a furious verbal attack on the male lead. He learned that Amon opened a magic classroom. It's to select and train her magic students. She uses this to choose candidates for the Demon King. The male lead then remembered his own secret. That is, about the Demon King, Greed, and the artificial human technology. Amon explained the reason Greed researches artificial humans is most likely to pass the time, because the Demon King has no lifespan limit. Even if he dies, he'll resurrect someday. However, he'll lose his memories upon resurrection, but a small number retain memories of the past. And what Greed has been researching is the strongest method of creation. Artificial humans are one of the candidates. What the male protagonist never expected was the strongest power exists within the male protagonist himself. This so-called strongest power is obtained through magic known as the Demon King's power. He also receives enhancements through a shield known as the God's power. Possessing both powers simultaneously makes him the strongest. However, what the male protagonist doesn't understand is why, in pursuing the strongest Greed, he also needs to create artificial human. Amon speculates that perhaps he wants to use the Andros bodies to conduct the strongest experiments. Thinking of the Andros being treated like livestock, the male protagonist is instantly filled with rage. He immediately decided to go to Greed's place. However, Amon poured cold water on him, because the protagonist is currently incapable of defeating Greed. Furthermore, the protagonist's greatest strength is a double-edged sword, because its magic essence flowing from magical creatures. Overuse will turn him into a demon, but if he can control it, perhaps he could become a demon lord. After Amon left, the male lead secretly vowed to become stronger. He remained unmoved by the harem's allure, because he had long since figured out the harem's situation. He even knew the measurements of their assets intimately. It all started when the male lead began constructing the bathhouse. The construction team was responsible for the building, while the male lead underwent intense magic training to prepare for the impending arrival of the Demon King. His harem is still drawing cards and withdrawing money in the maze management. He got rare flying and fairy units. However, the townspeople have some opinions about the bathhouse built by the Androids, but the adventurers can't wait to enter. Of course, the protagonist's harem needs to experience it first. They can even swim in the large bath. It's a pity there's no mixed bathing here. Otherwise, Neen, who just learned transformation magic, could have shown off her skills. Of course, the transformation only affects one body part. After a session of bouncy exploration, Neen felt like she had opened the door to a new world. The blue-haired twins couldn't help but get their hands on her. Just as they were having fun, the loud voices of a conspiracy came from the men's bathhouse next door. It turned out that the rough man could no longer resist. He was about to make a small hole. Even Marius had already crouched by the window. Whether or not he saw the girl's treasures didn't matter. What was important was the feeling of nervousness he wanted to experience. There were even some who started developing feelings for the main character's sister. The main character could only punish them on the spot. Of course, some people have a special liking for Nian. Even though she's a little flat-chested, he still wants to see. Hearing this, Nian almost tore down the bathhouse. Seeing the situation about to get out of control, the male lead had to speak up. And after seeing the adventurers emerge from the bathhouse refreshed, the townspeople were completely reassured about the bathhouse. The male lead's harem and his sister also came out of the bathhouse. The male lead's words just now made them a little unhappy. At a critical moment, Bird appeared and delivered a timely blow. The bathhouse was back in operation the next day. The townspeople and the android's relationship becomes more harmonious. However, there's some bad news. A group of monsters is heading towards this town. The male lead quickly gathered people. Under his encouragement and the offer of a high reward, all the adventurers immediately ignited their determination to protect the town. The two demon lords on the protagonist's side also made a discovery. It turned out that a new labyrinth had appeared nearby, and the monsters this time probably came from there. The two also said they would help the protagonist. The artificial humans also bravely volunteered to join. The protagonist also gave a mission to the newly summoned pet. In the distance, a dark mass of monsters suddenly appeared, but after the male protagonist's round of long-range attacks, more than half of the monsters instantly fell. However, the monsters also began to counterattack with magic. For a time, the male protagonist was caught off guard. At a critical moment, the male protagonist, along with his friends, entered the war. He charged into the midst of them. Relying on his own magic, he could even cope with attacks from behind with his eyes open. Under everyone's combined attack, all the monsters were instantly wiped out. However, these monsters were only the first wave. Suddenly, another line of monsters appeared in the distance, but the protagonist wasn't the least bit flustered. The next second, another group of monsters appeared, but they, having experienced this before, proceeded straight towards the other wave of monsters. So these were all the men he called for. With their help, the third wave of monsters was also cleaned up by the male lead. But now isn't the time to rest. The male lead must go and conquer the maze that releases a large number of monsters. And Amon also has a new discovery. The new labyrinth master should be the demon lord mentioned earlier. Hearing this, the male protagonist became even more determined to conquer that labyrinth. And this time, he didn't want to pull the demon lord like before. Ideally, he wanted to capture him alive. To this end, Amon gave the male protagonist an item. It should prove to be useful. But this time, the male protagonist didn't plan to bring Amon and Marius. The missing strength will be supplemented by green hair. He, the demon king, needs to stay behind to guard the home to protect the town, while the male lead is away. This important task is entrusted to Biao-Si and Amon. After making all the arrangements, the male lead sets off with his group, but upon entering the maze, they find it empty. Even detection magic senses nothing. There wasn't even a teleportation array to the next level. This means this is the final level. Just as they were wondering, a surge of immense magical power suddenly erupted. The male lead is just a human shield. However, once you anger him, his attack is comparable to a madman's. The male lead successfully found the demon king, Greed. He immediately asked the other party to surrender. Greed refused the protagonist's request. He showed the protagonist a large number of monsters heading towards the town, and he, with unlimited points, could continuously summon monsters. The town was merely a matter of time. At this point, the protagonist, enraged, roared in anger. It was at this time Greed discovers the protagonist's artificial human companion, Luna. Watching his creation grow, Greed feels quite pleased. He immediately invites Luna back to him. Luna flatly refuses. As soon as she speaks, Greed immediately reveals his true form. He immediately rushes towards the protagonist and unleashes a flurry of blows. With great difficulty, he finally pushed him back. But then, Greenhair failed to steal the bag and was knocked to the ground instead. Seeing Greenhair preparing to die, the male lead immediately forbade her from participating, because he didn't want to see anyone sacrificed. As soon as he finished speaking, Greed initiated a theft. Luckily, Nian arrived in time, unfolding the magic shield and attacking. When the male protagonist saw this, he immediately started to provoke and suppress his hatred. Just when Greed was about to release magic again, he was directly hit by Luna when she cast a spell. As Lily and the green-haired succeeded, Greed fell heavily to the ground. The male protagonist immediately went to him to fasten the cuffs that seal his power. In the small town, it was thanks to Amon's help that they successfully repelled a large number of monsters. Seeing all this, the male protagonist felt very relieved. At that moment, he discovered that Greed had a magic stone, the kind only found in artificial humans. When he realized something was wrong, the sudden appearance of the attacker from behind caught the male lead completely off guard. This is when the real Greed makes his appearance. The one the male lead defeated earlier was merely one of his artificial human clones. The two clashed again without exchanging a word. With a single strike, Greed sent the male lead flying several meters back. The male lead subsequently avoided falling into the opponent's trap. The two twin sisters immediately fused together. They then began to fight with Greed. The male protagonist, finally able to catch his breath, immediately adjusted his state. After taking continuous hits, the male protagonist had exhausted a large amount of his shield. Taking advantage of Lily holding off Greed, the male protagonist used his ultimate skill, life conversion, to strike back. Unexpectedly, greed withstood the male protagonist's strongest attack. Despite a powerful blow, greed remained unharmed. Having no other choice, the protagonist infused his entire body with magic. His body was instantly and significantly strengthened. He successfully wounded greed. However, the next second, the protagonist was thrown to the ground. Seeing his severely injured companion and Luna about to be killed, the protagonist suddenly unleashed a powerful force. Then, he punched greed. At this moment, the protagonist's mind was only filled with the thought of destroying everything. Under the power's empowerment, the protagonist easily pinned greed to the ground and beat him mercilessly. Just then, Nin called out to the protagonist. The protagonist, lost in a frenzy, no longer remembered Nin. He intended to kill him. Unexpectedly, Nin slapped him hard. He was directly jolted awake, but soon he fell back into a rage. With his willpower resisting and Nin calling to him, he finally regained full consciousness. Fully awake, then he picked up his shield. In order to win over the male protagonist, Grid played the written records of people in the town. Little did he know, this action harmed himself. Thanks to the broadcast text, the male lead succeeded. After recognizing the people in the town, people felt the male protagonist's shield. In this way, the male protagonist transferred a large amount of damage to greed. The male lead also helped the townspeople to rebuild life after the attack.